Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas, and I wanted to speak about. I want to talk about. I had a meeting today with a potential client, and I came to a conclusion that, like, we were speaking about movement, right? What is movement, and why do we train, and why do we need to lift certain amount of weight? Why do we need to train 3 times a week? Why not every day? And why our body can only push certain amounts? So there was a lot of, objectives from our body, from our biology, from our neurology. So this conversation triggered something interesting in my space, and I will be talking about this specific space, ideology, in this video, and I will explain how I see movement. And it's something so broad that it's hard to narrow things down regards what is movement. Why do we need to move this way? Why do we need to move that way? Why do we need to move ipsilateral? Why do we need to move contralateral? Why do we need to move bilateral? There's a lot to understand. There's a lot to take into consideration. So we were speaking about basically how modern society has brought gyms into cities. There's machines, fixated machines, right, to develop chest muscles, quads, glutes. Like, these machines create mind-muscle connection. They create stress. They create awareness to some degree, right, which is very helpful, and it's better than nothing. And we need to also, think of it about environment. So there's another video made me speaking about there's 3 components or 3 pillars that is crucial to understand as a mover, as a human. So we have environment, and this was spoken about Mosh. There's this really interesting guy that wrote this book that I can't remember, but I'm going to read. You guys probably know. And I haven't had chance to get hands on this book because I'm in Bali. And anyways, so environment, internal space or psychological space, which is again part of your neurology and what you think and how you feel within your body, within the environment. And then we have biological space or biological environment, the space you have in your joints, the way your body moves, the way your body is connected to your neurology. And how your neurology responds to the environment you're in. Is your environment very controlled? Is there a lot of chaos? What is that we can observe in our environments? How big is the room? How much space? Where's the ceiling? What's the floor made of? What can we smell? Fresh air? Do we smell humidity? Do we feel like we're suffocating? Is there air coming in? This is part of movement. And what I was kind of thinking about in that moment, as we're speaking about modern technology, and very interestingly, how I watched a few days ago, Ido Portal mentioning that the more advanced we get at technology, the less intellectual we become. Or the more technology we use, the less intellectual we become. The less technology we have, the more intellectual we become. You know what I mean? There's this crossover, which again, it's a speculation, it's a theory, right? I don't know if it's true, but I can see there's a lot of disconnection happening in the world. Anyway, going back to the topic, how modern society or the gyms, you walk in a gym, there's fucking light shining at you everywhere. It's usually, majority of commercial gyms are in a very small box room that I could probably touch the ceiling if I jumped. Again, I'm speaking from my experience in the gym I used to train in UK. Again, I'm aware there's beautiful gyms like here in Bali, that there's so much big ceilings, big space, right? So you walk in a gym, you see what I see. I see so many mirrors. I see mirrors that are made specifically to make you look a certain way. I see lights everywhere. I see a lot of things filling in the space, a lot of machines, a lot of treadmills. I see there's so much space, but so little space to move. So that environment already says a lot about. It says about control. There's a control. And again, I'm speaking from a philosophical way. It's what I'm saying might be absolute bullshit, and I might be fucking on a cloud nine speaking these things, but this is what I see, right? And then I was speaking to my friend, right? And I was saying, all right, what would happen if you suddenly took everything out of the gym and you would just leave some monkey bars, you would leave tennis balls, juggling balls, you would leave a few sticks, you would leave football, you would leave, maybe a rope or something that is not a fixated thing that you can move in space and be malleable, like change around, shift. What would happen? Like, I'm thinking theoretically. Imagine, you wake up, you go to your gym, and you're like, fuck, where's all the equipment? And you see all these little tennis balls. You're like, I can't. Like, it's very hard to play around with my own. It sounds weird, and I was like, okay, let's ask this individual. Do you want to throw tennis balls? Do you want to do some partner workout? So imagine how much power it would. Again, we have been programmed that gym has to be a certain way, that we have to look a certain way, that we have to do certain things. But what if you took everything away and you just turned to a gym that had only tennis balls, that had football? Imagine how much fun it would be to train, how much connected we would become. Instead of, you've been in this situation. I am about to use the lat pull down machine. I go to the gentleman and ask, how many sets you got left to do? And, he's like, yeah, I've got another 2 sets. And you're just standing there and just waiting because you're scared to disturb this gentleman's focus, right? Because he's focused with the machine. But what if, what if there was no machine? Who would you have to connect with? So environment shapes us. It's very important to keep that in mind. And I believe so, maybe because I can be naive, and no, I truly believe that taking away machines would connect us with ourselves, with each one of us. And going back to the point, environment important, right? And when I teach things, when I teach my students to move, when I teach my students to understand, I'm challenging them, and I want them to think for themselves. Because, if I wanted to learn how to paint, I would find a coach, I would find a teacher. And if a teacher told me, okay, Thomas, you're only allowed to do what I'm doing. There's 3 colors and you're only allowed to mix the colors I'm mixing. You're only allowed to move in the same line I'm moving. You're only allowed to use the same brush I'm using. You're only allowed to use the same length, the same distance or the length or the space of the canvas. What's happening there? I'm copying. I am not expressing myself. I'm expressing the teacher. I'm following the teacher, which again is not incorrect. There's time and place for it, but it's like teaching, or a true teacher should also be in space of not knowing in front of their students. A true teacher should also be in a space, where they're not very good at. Like Ido Portal says, is there's one thing of showing what you're very good at and impressing people, right? But there's a humbleness of teachers showing what they're not good at and what they're getting better at. And students can jump on the same wagon as they are, and they can be in the same level as the teachers. So what I'm saying or the message from this idea is the way I want to influence my students I show them what I do. I show them that using these 3 colors, I can create this color. Using this brush will paint this way. Moving my arm this way, this way, this way will create a certain pattern. And I want them to just be like, okay, now it's your turn. Show me what can you express. And the same with movement. It's like, do this, do that, do this. Like I do this, I teach my students to do certain things, to move a certain way, right? But I also challenge them saying, why do you want to move this way? I like to give them examples. Some students, I like to be like, okay, this is how I move. I try and explain it. And I'm like, can you show me, what can you come up with? Your body is capable. You can do push-ups. You can do this. You can rotate your shoulder joints. You have space to move. Can you express yourself? How do you feel? Where does your body feel to move? Can you just do this? Can you just relax? Can you just relax your arm? It's weird, but can you relax? Movement is actually also being still. So I want to encourage each teacher and each practitioner, and I'm still at the very low level. I'm not someone that knows everything. I just know what I know, and I want to encourage to be more curious about why you do what you do. Be curious about, why do I have to do this way? Question your teachers, question your practitioners, question your coaches. And movement is life. One last message before I switch this off. You have canvas, you have 3 colors, you have dozens of brushes. You experiment. What happens if you mix this and this and use this brush? What happens how about taking 4 brushes in a row in all different fingers, holding them differently? What would happen if I just move? Think out the box. What would happen if I use my toes to paint? What would happen? Fuck the brushes. I'm just going to put paint on my hands. You know what I mean? Experiment. And there's no perfect painting. It's what comes out and how it makes you feel. And it shouldn't feel forced. It should feel helpful. It should feel interesting. It should feel curious. I don't know. What's your thoughts about this? I'd love to hear it. And ciao.